good evening, Gallion. This is Mayor Tom O'Leary coming to you tonight with 2 or 3 bits of information about the city, some good news, and then we'll see what kind of questions that you have in mind. First of all, in the category of small recognition, I think it's worth noting that our new playground at Heisey Park was awarded 8th in the nation, 8th among 50 entrants in a recent competition for playgrounds through national competition. So I think that's feels good to get that kind of validation or recognition, and wanted to mention that not only do the young kids in town that have used it like it, but it's among playground salespeople and designers. It's been seen as a pretty solid new playground. A couple of other things to touch on. We have, as far as new legislation tomorrow, one major item that's just come through committee that we really want to talk a little bit about tonight, but the short of it is that there'll be a rate reduction proposed, electric rate reduction proposed tomorrow night. The details will be presented at council, but it's a fairly significant reduction, and so something on the order of, to use 1,000 kilowatts, it'll be something on the order of $10 a month. So we'll see how that goes. I'm sure it'll be well received by council, but the exact numbers that are going to be in the proposal and what I expect to be a first reading tomorrow shows rate cuts for all the different classifications, residential and commercial, and then we have 2 power, a large power and a normal power determined by by the demand that the industry uses. So pretty exciting news. I can hear in my voice. I don't sound real excited, but I think once the numbers are rolled out and you get an idea of how that impacts your bill, whether it's a business or for most of us residential bill, pretty significant reduction. And I think the thinking up here at City Hall among council and the administration is that we've been accumulating a little bit of a fund balance over the past several months, and I think now's the time to stop that accumulation of fund balance and put us in a position where we can lower monthly rates over the next year or two. Without getting too much into that, in 21 and in 23, 2 major debts, $1 million a year that the city is paying on debts that resulted from the modernization of the system will be paid for, and that'll give us a little bit of a cushion that as rates creep up over that same period, having that reduction in debt service really ought to allow us to make this rate reduction without having to come back in a few years with what would be a rate increase. So I think that's one of the major items that council will be talking about tomorrow night. It's of interest to everyone who is an electric customer in the city, and so I encourage you to stay tuned on that. And again, I would be surprised, but it isn't out of the realm. It's not really, it's up to council, but I would be surprised if that passes tomorrow night. So we'll see here in a couple of weeks. Somebody reminds me, we'll make that, whether it got passed in the first reading or not, it'll be someplace, there's something that we start off on. So anyway, I think those are, a couple major items going on in the city, recognition for our playground, and then moving ahead with a rate reduction. So other than that, I don't know if we have any questions yet or not.
We do, Mr. Mayor. The first question tonight comes from Curtis.
Yeah.
It's in reference to the new indoor athletic complex.
Right.
He's wanted to know who is going to fund the employment for the new athletic complex?
No, I would say that right now the likely operator of the facility would be the newly formed Port Authority. There'll be possibly a management contract that brings in people who have expertise in that. Although it may be a city-owned facility, it's unlikely that almost less than 5% chance that it would be a city-operated facility.
And that's the only question we have so far this evening.
You know, just an idea that's been kicking around up here that I want to mention while we see if there are any other questions coming in. Really has to do with the uptown area. I think that we're lucky to have an uptown area that has as many nice buildings, as many successful businesses as we have. But it seems to me a little bit over the last few years that we've lost any sort of sense of direction. And so I've been talking with the Chamber of Commerce and other uptown groups about whether the time is right for us to bring someone on to head up that redevelopment effort. So far, that's not been a real successful endeavor, but my hope is if we can get 2 or 3 organizations partnering in the community that we can get someone on task. When you go from Union to Liberty, you can see some really great examples of businesses doing well, and then right next to them, buildings that have been vacant for several years. And you know, as each of us are either uptown every day, or each of us in the community are in the uptown area, I think we all recognize or notice that there's room for improvement there. I've grown to believe that it's going to need some focus and, as they often say, time on task to really put together a marketing plan, put together an investment plan, and see if we can't bring some new energy. Candidly, the Uptown Redevelopment Grant didn't hit the mark for many businesses, and quite frankly was a disappointment, and something that we need to work with the County Commissioner's Office candidly in the future to address. So I think over the next several months, so you're going to see and hear a little bit more from City Hall, from the Mayor's Office, about what we can do to take the successes and take the level of development that we have uptown and move it forward, and see if we can't fill up some of the vacant buildings that are up there and have a little more full-fledged 4 or 5 blocks of commercial renewal. So anyway, what else we got?
Okay, our next question tonight comes in from Cindy. Obviously, we've had some unseasonably warm weather. Yeah. But she was wondering if there were any plans for the ice skating rink.
Yeah, the plans are let me see how to answer that. As little as I like cold weather, if I knew all we had to do is buy an ice skating rink and we'd have warm winters, I'd have done that 3 or 4 years ago. I don't know what to tell you. We're waiting for half-heartedly, for a non-winter person, half-heartedly waiting for the weather to drop so that we can get that out there. We've been actually doing the kind of work in the service department that you'd see us doing in the spring at this point. But yeah, the plan would be to roll it out, freeze it up as soon as we can get a week or so of cold enough weather to make it a worthwhile endeavor. But it is kind of ironic to me is we've had that for 2 winters. We've had 2 mild winters. But that's the least of our worries. We've got salt that we have to store again this winter, so we're beginning to. And I'll stop right there, folks, because anybody who believes in jinxes will say, "Shut up! We're not through the winter already." But yeah, the plan is to get the ice skating rink up if the weather turns favorable for us.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The next question we had came from Shannon. It was about plans for the old middle school land. However, Several of the viewers tonight actually commented that the Historical Society owns that land.
Yep.
So I think that's a question that we can move past, if you will.
Yeah, I think that, and they've had, once in the last several years, they had come, meaning the Historical Society had come forward with a proposal for a equipment storage or a artifact storage building, and it would require a zoning change, and as a result of that, it didn't fare real well in its first presentation of the Planning Commission, but it would require, in order to do that, you'd have to move through and get a variance to the zoning, and so for now, I think it's going to remain a greenfield.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The next question comes from Randy, and he wants to know if the city is going to be doing anything for South Park.
I think that what we would do at South Park, there's a couple of plans. The short answer is, Randy, no, there are no active plans for anything in this year's construction season. I'd list the number of things that have been done there over the last few years, but that really isn't the question. What I would like to consider doing there, in cooperation with the baseball parents, there's really two groups: the T-ballers, the littlest kids, and then it's a coach pitched or dad pitched, is what I call it, sort of Little Sox League. There really isn't much of a concession stand down there, and in the immediate future, what I would see as a top project would be to replace that existing concession stand, which is pretty not in the greatest shape, with a new prefabricated facility like this, a version of a concession stand very similar to what we have in the newer restrooms that we put in town. But without leaving you with a total lame-o answer, I would want to point out that we have done quite a bit with handicap accessibility and replaced the bathrooms at South Park. I'd suppose that a look at some new playground equipment would make sense, and I'm open to to hear that. I would say the last thing I'd say is that that's a park that we'd likely to put full-fledged video detection down there, because for as little of activity is down there, we have a large amount of or significant, large, whatever that means exactly, but we have a fair amount of vandalism down there. So it's the only reason I may be hesitating a little bit to say, yeah, we're going to spend a couple $100,000 on playground equipment. The amount of vandalism we have down there and the amount of activity outside of the baseball season is kind of limited. So I suspect Randy wants to tell me I'm full of crap and that there's all kinds of potential, and I'm all right with that, either to call or to shoot us another message and tell me how wrong I am. But I'm open for suggestions. But we have put, we have made some improvements down there.
All right, thank you, Mr.
It's
Mayor.
about Chris, that's about the worst answer. We've been doing this for a year and a half or something like that. That's really a bad answer. I don't know what we could do at South Park. I really am. It's a lame answer, but the neighborhood, folks in the neighborhood, let us know. We've talked about a splash. You can have mini spray grounds, and we've talked a little bit about that. But the parks that we put in are so well received. I'm not sure, if we put a $30,000-$40,000 small splash pad in South Park, how much use it would get. But it's a good question. You got me. I'll start noodling on it.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
A couple of comments just in reference to some areas that need some TLC, if you will. Came in from Curtis about the parks needing some mulch and sprucing up, and then Cindy also talked about the building that used to be Murphy's on the Square needing painted. So those are just two comments. I don't know if you want to talk
Yeah,
about
I would
those.
hit the uptown building, all the buildings in the square, there's different ways you can look at the uptown area from, east to west, or from the square, out in all directions. But clearly the heart of the square, those buildings need to be well maintained. And I think the current owner of that building up there has best intentions, but the capital necessary, I think it's, even at this point, it's probably required a little bit more than painting. What was the other comment? First one, right before that.
Just the parks needing a little sprucing up, mulch. That
Yes,
kind of thing.
yes, and yes. One of the things that is on the list of projects under consideration for freeze funding is the remulching in a fairly major set of improvements at the Veterans Square in Heisey Park. So we need to do some stuff there. The mulching within the playgrounds, the existing playgrounds, whether they're South Park or East or Heisey Park, is another one of the major reconstruction projects. Anybody who has been with their kids or grandkids, any kids who are watching that have been at the parks, know that the playgrounds there really need to be remulched, re-leveled, and so there's a plan this year to put rubber mulch in those existing playgrounds. The idea of putting in a playground, a base like we did in the new playground area, it's ruled out a little bit because of the useful life of those playground units we're talking about. They're 15 years plus, and so what we'll do is make a short-term, if you will, 5-year fix with a longer plan for the city to replace some of those existing playground devices or toys in South, in East, and in Heisey Park. The stuff in South Park's in reasonably good shape, but certainly the mulch area around it, all that needs reconstructed. So I think that's really the answer to the question.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The next question comes from Curtis. What's the current progress with the new athletic complex?
I think really the best way to describe it is that the Port Authority is actively working on a complete financing and as complete of a operational funding plan as one can work out, before a facility opens. I think that's going to take about 3 months to work on. There was a phone call today with someone who is going to assist the Port Authority in putting together the financing plan. My guess is in 60 days maybe that will come back to City Council, and then City Council will make a determination. My hope is in favor of the final package that's worked out, and then that request would be made to the Freeze Foundation Board. I think in some ways the Foundation Board is more supportive because people know who these members are. The city appointed a fair number of them. So anyways, I think the Freeze Foundation is really waiting to get a request from the city, and so the next key part of this whole process will be getting City Council on board behind a concrete and detailed package. So probably 60 days and 30 or 60 days after that. So as I've said a couple other times, this project needs to be put on the board to be funded and constructed, or we really need to move on from it. So my thoughts are sometime between now and the fall of the year, these details will be worked out. We'll be on the way to clearing the ground and getting the project built over then probably the next year or 18 months. So late 2021, maybe early 22 opening if things go well.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
The next question comes from Tina, and you already hit on South Park.
Yeah.
But her question also included any plans. What are any plans for updates at East Park?
I mentioned that we're going to remulch, and there's at least one new piece of playground apparatus. I don't want to make it too fancy of a term, but we're looking at one addition out there, and I really don't want to talk a lot about it until we get a design. But we've had conversations with the same company that helped us build the playground that we just opened up late last fall about a couple of enhancements. How's that? Fancy improvements. And I think it'll really fill out East Park. But the existing playground equipment, which isn't really in pretty good shape and is actively and frequently used out there, we're going to rebuild the base there so it's a little safer, and the swing set area and those areas are kind of dug out, so we're going to rebuild that. So that's what's on board for East Park. Of course, the Splash Park, we had over 20,000 people there last summer. So each year that's open, it goes up a couple, 3,000. I don't even know what you're called. Guests, maybe citizens. They come in from all over, so it's been a great asset. So East Park's, it's as busy as any of our parks, and I think all of us involved in the city and that live out there in those neighborhoods are really proud of it. It's one of the nicer things in town.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The next question comes from Emily. She wants to know if the tube slide at Heisey Park will be replaced. Her kids miss it.
Yeah, that is yes. What got hit with a tree last year, that's out of there. So we had to take it out. We're going to replace that, put the new mulch in. I wouldn't want to say it's reconstructed, but we're going to fix what was broken. And while we're on the parks, it's funny. People are as into the parks as people are tonight, or they're like, there's more things than parks. It's a little bit like schools where all they want to do is talk about sports. Well, parks are an important part of a community, as sports are of the high school and school experience. But anyway, those, I think you'd probably have to be a teenager or be an adventurous parent to really know this. But the slide at the swimming pool and the mushroom and those things that were super cool 15 years ago when they were put in are really in need of replacement. We did a sort of major repair to the slide last year with every intention of having it be temporary. So if there is a big major freeze fund request for this year's freeze allocation, it is probably the rebuilding of those slides and the mushroom or whatever else we can put at Heisey Park to modernize that. So what is this park night, huh? Yeah. I think we're getting to the end of the winter. People are starting to get itchy about getting outside and thinking about parks, and that's all well and good. We're thinking about parks and paving the streets that we're going to try to tackle this year. So what else we have?
Okay, again, another question from Emily, and we're staying on the topic of parks.
That's cool.
Does the city have a team or department that can maintain and repair the trails at Kobe Park? Last I was there, it was extremely overgrown and had lots of trees blocking the paths.
Okay, what happened, no is the short answer, and what happened, gosh, it seems like 3 years ago now, we had a bike shop in town. And they were big on trail bikes or dirt bikes. I'm probably hacking the exact type of but motocross type bikes. And we went out and we created a pathway, and soon after that business went out of town, or went out of business, left town. And so the driving force behind maintaining it, once it was cleaned up, left, with the operators of that store. So it's, I think admittedly we've gotten away from maintaining those Kobe Park trails. Just they were only in there maybe a year and a half. So, I mean, all these questions, that you can imagine being written down, and we'll use them as in-basket stuff for the parks, and creating a schedule of projects that need to be tackled next in the park system. So.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The next
Yep.
question we have comes from, actually, it's Emily again, and it's in regards to the overpass. Can anything be done about the vulgar graffiti under the overpass? It's very vulgar and awful when I drive past it every day. Nasty phrases and certain four-letter F words.
Yeah, I didn't know it was. I mean, yes, we'll paint it. Keep going, Emily. You're our eyes and ears. Yeah, we're going to look in earnest at the safety and look at some of the long-term needs for that overpass. It's had minimal maintenance. That's a good thing. And the project that we did, I believe it'll be 3 years ago this year, was only a temporary project. So that's separate and apart from the graffiti. But maintaining that is an important asset that we have, and the only funding that we would be looking at is perhaps some safety money that the state has released. It's really not in the main the heart of what ODOT wants to accomplish with the safety money, but I don't think it's in the idea of taking care of some of the safety issues on the overpass. I don't think that's ineligible. So that's what we'd be looking at to fund any kind of major rehab to the railroad bridge.
All right, thank you, Mayor. Next question comes from John. We're going to take a sidestep away from the parks.
Good.
Are there any new companies or businesses showing interest to locate in Galion?
Yeah, yes. There is a project right now. It's a temporary project, meaning a 3-year project that businesses expanded into the old Pico building. So that's ongoing. We have been in contact with the owners of Tramec Sloan, looking at their maintaining their employment and potential possible growth. There actually are. And I'm not going to say anything else. There's actually another existing business that's looking at 25 or 30 jobs in a new facility. So there's actually some of the plans that we've had in place since the mayoral system came back are starting to congeal. The redevelopment of Pico looks like it's closer than ever, and we'll see how that goes. The old, I call it the old Peabody building, but it's better known around town as the McLean Industries. There's actually some people looking at that, and so yeah, I've been pleasantly surprised at the amount of activity in expansion of existing businesses or a couple, 3 new recruitments. So you're always, until the project lands, it always is, so it's better to keep your mouth shut about. So we're working on that, and we're working real aggressively and trying to develop the 30 and 61 interchange, opening that up for more new industry to the community. But yeah, there are a handful of small 25, 30 person projects, expansions, and candidly, in a town our size, those are as important as us landing a 150, 200 person factory. That slow incremental growth of our existing businesses is something is happening by intention, and also just because businesses are doing well in town. And I think the reduction in electric rates can't do anything but add a little bit of oomph behind that. So. Yeah, was that Curtis? Is that the question?
The the
About the
new
development?
businesses
Yeah.
came from John.
John, you work at it, and then something big happens, and so that's kind of what might be the case. But yeah, there's incremental progress, and I feel good about it.
All right, thank you, Mayor.
Yeah.
The next question, again, it's a situation where we had a viewer ask a question.
Yeah.
Some of our viewers answered that question, and then she came back, this is Emily,
Yeah.
and asked, can you give some specifics on the apartments that are going in next to Arby's and Drug Mart
Right.
in terms of, how many rooms, those kind of things?
Yeah, I think they're 1 and 2 bedroom units. Could be mistaken. They're 3 floors, and there'll be 36 units in that project, and they are beginning to really actively lease it. I think when they're completed entirely, that'll be when you'll have the initial eye test. But I've been real pleased with the pace of construction. I think they look aesthetically, they look really nice, and I think that whole plaza it will likely fill up, and it looks like at this point we've had questions for about a half hour. No grocery store. If you had to ask a grocery store question, I would say that's probably the best short-term opportunity, is that what's gone on with Drug Mart will continue to go on. I think I had a meeting with them last week, and I think they really intend to make every effort to expand that facility. So that whole area up there, new apartments, a little more grocery store.
And it's funny.
That's good.
It's funny, Mayor. We did get a comment about still need a better grocery store. So glad you hit on that.
Yeah. Hey, something, and I was going to challenge him to this, and the guy beat me to it in the conversation. We were talking about, you hear it all the time. When are we in a Walmart? Da 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 da. So we're talking about a neighboring community I envy in a lot of respects, Upper Sandusky. And they were doing a price comparison there in Upper, and if people know where the Drug Mart is, it's kind of on the in-town side of 3023, and Walmart's on the outside. And so they did a comparison, and the guy he didn't show me exactly, but they were within $1 or so in a $30 or $40 basket of groceries. So I think that's one of the things that as the Drug Mart it provides more and more answers. I think some comparisons to what is available in other towns, you'll find that they've done a good job not only expanding options, but that the prices are competitive. So that may be one of the big things we've got, and in terms of the best opportunities that we have for grocery store. A new one right now, that looks like a longer and longer shot, to be quite honest.
All right. Thank you, Mayor.
What a downer.
The next is a comment from Kara, an idea actually about partnering with the health department from the cleanup day.
Yeah.
When tires are disposed of, could we use those tires for rubber mulch in the parks?
It's a neat idea. There's a couple steps in between to get it from the tire, to get the steel out of it, and then get it ground to a use. This outfit out here is one of the largest recyclers of tires in the whole state. But I think the short answer is that's not their product line, and everybody at City Hall appreciates the health department and that partnership, but from my point of view, when you get that cleanup day done, that is one of the best afternoons of the whole year, so you can sit down and relax, because that's hard work and torturous. But I don't know, Kara. Come up and bug me. It's I don't want to reject it entirely, but that's not the business that these guys are in primarily, in that kind of rubber mulch. So, and they'll call me, believe me, if Kara, if I'm wrong, Willie will call me and tell me you're absolutely wrong. We're really into that, and we would consider it.
All right, thank you, Mayor. The next question we have comes from Denny this evening.
Yeah.
Really just kind of two parts. Has there ever been any thought of a Christmas light display in Heisey Park? Could be in the main park as well as the park behind the YMCA.
Oh, like a Ogle Bay or something like that, sort of drive-through park. Oh, I tell you, the one that
Upper.
comes to mind is Upper. No, but that's a really good idea. And I say it's a good idea, and this will horrify every a kilowatt of electricity must be compensated for. But because we do have municipal utility, we could absorb some of the cost of that public display. I think probably what we're lacking is a civic organization or two, one to take a lead and one to support it. But that's a neat idea because the drive-through aspect of Heisey Park over behind the Y lends itself to that, and then you certainly can drive through our park. So that's a neat idea. It's a neat idea, Denny. He should volunteer. The heck. The worst thing about having a good idea is you're sometimes stuck making it happen. But I mean, that is a neat idea. It's a neat idea.
All right, the next
I
question.
tell you something else, a neat idea along those lines. It's like this is a bring back a decent idea. Is when I was a little kid, so I'll tell you how long ago that was. They used to have a competition, and you would do the light display, and then somebody of do-gooders or I don't know, some old people then went around and judged, and then there was a month of free electricity to the light display that was deemed the fanciest so that would be that's something I would maybe like to see come back. That would cause some neighborhood. If somebody went crazy like Clark Griswold over the top next to somebody who wants to try to sleep at night, we might run into a little conflict. But I'd say the people who live right across the street from I can't think of the guy's name. He works for the funeral home. That's really cool. At Boyd and Portland Way South. That the last couple of years he's put that. So I'm all in favor of it. We don't have to go through the park. We can just go right down Portland Way South. But I would be in favor of that. I think council would have to somehow authorize that. The notion that we would have that sort of competition. But anyway, that made a lot. That was maybe that's the old days. But I guess those are the days you drove uptown to see the lights uptown when you were a little kid, and that your parents had covered their obligation. That doesn't satisfy kids today, does it, folks? So anyway, what else we got?
All right, just a few more here this evening, Mayor. Amanda throwing an idea out back to the parks.
Yeah.
How about making the East Park tennis court into a dog park?
It's too small, but it'd be easy to clean up the droppings. I wondered with the parks, we really need to get a focus on that, and I believe it's Wednesday is the Parks Committee meeting. Is Wednesday night of this week, and I'll bring some of these ideas up, as many of them that got written down tonight. We got to do something about a dog park because it's a recurring theme, and we've not ignored it, but we've never really executed on it. And so we have some parks that would lend themselves to that. The tennis court at East Park. Nah, I'm not sure. Again, like I said, it's too small. You could hose it off, though. That'd be good. Actually, there's some toys that we want to put out there in East Park that would be, so it'd be in that area. So we'll see what happens. But your dog park, I've just heard that about enough times to take action on it. So I have a dog, and I'm able to walk it in kind of free space back in there where the bike path's going to go. So I'm going to have to find a leash for my dog and behave. But yeah, I think we need to get a place like that in Galion. So great idea, wrong location.
All right, thank you, Mayor. Two more questions and then one more comment.
Okay.
Cindy asks about any interest on whether the apartments can be rented or any information on how to rent.
Yeah, call up here tomorrow. We'll give you all that information. I know they've hired a local real estate person, but I don't have that information in front of me, and it's 419-468-1857. We'll try to get you to the folks that are renting.
All right, and our last question,
Yeah.
and one more comment.
Yeah.
It comes from Susie. It's in reference to property upkeep enforcement, how to go about enforcing people to keep their yards clean, clear away the trash, etc.
There's I find myself out in the lead on a lot of issues in town, and on this one I probably won't be all the way out in front, but there's enough of a discussion about what needs to be done that tells me there'll be a good, healthy discussion about that this year. How's that for a bad answer? On the trash in the yard, I'm not as hopeful, but I do think that there's going to be an attempt to understand whether or not we should change ordinances in Galion and increase the ability and the teeth, if you will, of enforcement on dilapidated properties, or whether we'll go with the kind of gentle persuasion that we've tried to use the last few years. We've talked about this. We probably had one of the more lively one of these conversations a couple of weeks ago when somebody mentioned the old Firelands Bank property, and that became the source of a discussion, and I kind of blew it off, and then I think it was the next day, longtime friend made some comments on Talk About Galion, and boy, that took off. There are like 85 comments. And that's why I say it's a big issue. I'll say what I said the other night, though. It's not something that I have this raging passion about. And, I don't think people want to get beat up or have worse by going to their next door neighbor and asking them to clean up or offering them to help. But I'm not big on using the power of the police or city enforcement to sort out something that when you get to the bottom, it's almost always a fight between neighbors. And it's hardly ever about trash. It's about something that happened 2 or 3 years ago. So really unpopular answer to what I think is a well-intentioned, I'd like to have this cleaned up to make the town nicer. But in spite of that social media back and forth over this topic, I'm probably stuck in the same, unlikely to do a whole lot. Now, the last thing I would say is guard against the impulse that wants to fine somebody. Because although there's people who don't take care of it that could take care of it, most of the folks who aren't taking care of their property, if they had the resources, they would. And so I'm kind of of the school of thought that if you use the ability to fine or to put people in jail over those property code violations, I'm not sure we'll get the results that we want. I know for one thing, what starts out as a yelling match between two neighbors will escalate pretty fast if one neighbor gets thrown in jail because of enforcement. So I kind of worry about that, and that's not the best answer, and it's a long one, but I think that we should be cautious if we go to change our local ordinances and go from the type of enforcement we've been attempting to have happen to a more aggressive enforcement. You may not get the town any more cleaned up, but you may escalate hostilities among neighbors in a way that we kind of might wish we had not uncorked those sort of negative, unneighborly impulses. So there's that. What else we got? We got a comment?
We do, and I think this is just a little
go for it.
Ribbing.
Yeah.
This is from Jeff.
Yeah.
Tell the mayor Harding will beat Gallion in football next season. He's pretty passionate about his Tigers.
Well, I appreciate that. I think it's there was I think I know who we're talking about. There was a fellow that came in that was trying to promote the awareness about addiction and where you could get some help and stuff. We started talking. We talked for a half hour or so, and then it turned out he was a football dad. So if that's the same guy, I remember him. And talk's cheap. So anyways, I appreciate that. The last thing I want to do is I want to close with is over the last couple of weeks, we have invited, we as in Matt Eckelberry and myself, I guess, but as have invited the 6 county commissioner candidates for this year's 2 county commissioner seats up here to City Hall. And what we've done is a half-hour kind of one-on-one interview, 40 minutes with some of them. And so tomorrow on this website and through this YouTube, we're going to start dropping those. And I'm going to make a quick pitch. Maybe by March, all of these candidates are running as Republicans in the primary. By March, it may be that the national races are over in terms of who's likely to be the nominee. If that's the case, I really encourage independents, or mostly I'm talking to Democrats, to go ahead and switch parties and vote in this, because otherwise you're not going to have anything to say about who 2 of the 3 county commissioners are in Crawford County over the next 4 years. And I'd argue and passionately that next to this national race of the president, that this local commissioner race is as important, or 2 races are as important to your daily life and how government affects you daily as anything else you're going to have a chance to vote for. So the 5 out of the 6 candidates have agreed. We're going to drop those interviews. I don't know. I'm certainly not going to change professions at this advanced age, but what I think it does is the conversation gives you an idea of how these candidates will approach working with Gallion and whether or not we can hope to have a change in the working relationship between the city of Gallion, the residents of Gallion, and county government overall. So, take some time and do that. They're really meant to be sort of mini podcasts. You give it a half hour, you can learn more. And what's happened since we've lost daily newspaper service is you hardly know anything about these candidates. You get 1 or 2 inches, you know who they are, their age, where they live, what they've done. You don't know diddly about them beyond that unless you know them. And having talked to all of these candidates and knowing the one candidate that hasn't been interviewed yet, probably not going to interview, knowing him pretty well, excuse me, I think you'll find that everybody's got a different approach, and it would be worth a couple hours of your time just to get a flavor for who these people are and make an intelligent choice. So at the risk of droning on and on, something I'd never do, I want to say thanks for listening. A lot of great questions tonight, and Wednesday night's park committee meeting, we'll have a lot of input from your comments tonight. Tomorrow night, rate reduction, electric rate reduction. Don't faint. Come on in and see what we're talking about and whether or not you believe that's significant, will have a significant impact on everyone's daily personal or daily business budget. So hope to see you tomorrow night. Good night.